नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्तनिवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। I thought we would also do the Shanti Patha for the Kena Upanishad. We should have been doing that anyway. Om Apyayantu Mama Angani Vakpranaschakshuh Shrotramato Balamindriyani Cha Sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastu Anirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharmaha Te Mai Santu Te Mai Santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So in the last class, I had mentioned a couple of things. One is that some of the arguments and logic was not very clear, and I thought one of the reasons was that I was looking at both, because this Kena Upanishad is unique because Adi Shankara has written two bhashyas in it, Pada Bhashya and Vakya Bhashya. So I was trying to go back and forth between them, and somehow the continuity got lost a little bit. So that was one thing. And the other one is that the concept that we ended with in the class, that the Atma is different from known and also different from the unknown. This needs to be explored a little bit more clearly. So I thought that I would start with that, and we'll continue with it. So one thing we might do is to just quickly recite the first chapter, all the shlokas in the first chapter. It's always nice to remember that, to recall that when you're studying the Upanishad. So let me just quickly go through that only once. Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha kena pranah prathama praiti yuktaha kene shitam vacham imam vadanti Chakshuh Shrotram Kau Devo Yunakti Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Mano Yat Vachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Pranaha Chakshushascha Chakshu Atimuchya Dhiraha Pretyasmat Lokat Amrita Bhavanti Na Tatra Chakshur Gacchati Na Vak Gacchati No Manaha न विद्मो न विजानीमः यथैत धनुशिष्यात् अन्यदेव तद्विदितात् अथो अविदितात् अवधि इति शुश्रुमा पूर्वेषां येनस्तच्चत् व्याचचक्षिरे यद्वाचा अनभ्युदितं येन वाक् अभ्युद्यते तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदितमुपासते यन्मनुषा न मनुते येनाहुर्मनो मतं तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदितमुपासते यच्चक्षुषा न पश्यति येन चक्षुंषि पश्यति तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदितमुपासते यत् श्रोत्रेण न शृणोति येन श्रोत्रमिदगुं सुश्रुतं तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदितमुपासते यत् प्राणेन प्राणिति येन प्राणः प्रणीयते तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदितमुपासते. Okay, so those are the 9 verses of the first chapter, and then we will go up to the fourth shloka of the second chapter, Pratibodha Viditam Matam, which kind of caps this whole insight, the Vedantic insight that we are following with the help of Kedopanishad. So we will at that point take a stock as to what we want to do, whether we want to cover the rest of it or switch texts to something else. But until then, let's continue on. So the first shloka, first mantra actually, because it's a Vedic text, the first mantra, yeah, the word mantra is an interesting one, important one. I keep saying interesting, but really interesting in the sense that it is worth knowing. So, so mantra means mananat trayate iti. Trayate means that it protects you against all the samsara. And how? By thinking about it. Mananat, mananam, same dhatu, man dhatu. So mananat trayate iti mantra. So this is the etymology of the word mantra. So with this first mantra, the very highly educated and highly mature student asks the question, how does this whole world run? What makes it go? What powers it? So I say that's highly mature because for a normal person these questions don't occur. It runs. World is what it is. You deal with it. What's the big thing about asking? I don't understand. There may be answers, there may not be answers, but why waste time doing that? But after you've exhausted all the other ways of understanding and also being very anxious to find something which is reliably trustworthy in terms of going in the direction of increasing my peace of mind. So with that in view, people do begin to start wondering what's going on. So this is that question. Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. And so this is just a poetic way of saying it, powered by whom the mind falls into its vishayas. It just basically means what makes the whole world go. And who powers it? How does it run? So, in the answers it was pointed out, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manaha, very much like the example of electricity working through the appliance, that really speaking, the power to turn the blades in a fan comes from electricity. So it's like it's the fan of the fan, because the fanness of the appliance is really powered by electricity. So similarly, the coldness of a air conditioner comes from the same electricity. Shotrasya shotram manaso manaha vachoha vacham. Whatever you want to say, the essence of that comes from a non-changing electricity, which by itself is not endowed with with the fanness. It's not as though the fanness is part of that, but the way it is functioning, it allows for a variety of appliances to do what they do best. So this was pointed out, that really speaking, the answer to your question on who powers everything, it begins by saying that it is something which is like electricity, which by itself doesn't have the guna of fanness or the heatness or the coldness. It doesn't have it, but it creates that. So then the question was, okay, all right, if that's the case, can you tell me something more about this electricity? Good, I understand that. I'm beginning to understand that. But now I'm very curious about, it's just like in the world also. If there is a person who is intelligent enough or who's been taught to ask these questions when you take physics classes and chemistry classes and so on, that there is something called electricity which makes it all work. So it's a very natural question, subsequent question, that tell me more about electricity. How is that generated? And what are its qualities? What makes it so powerful? And so, when I went to undergraduate school, so even though I was the first batch of this college in Bihar, which went into electronics and telecommunications and so on, so it was not strictly part of the electrical department, but we had to study through all of that anyway, about the bipolar reason for it and how the electricity flows and all of that. We had to learn. We were not experts in electrical appliances. We were more on the computer side of it, but we had to learn. So similarly here also, the student can ask, tell me more about electricity. So here also, the question is, tell me more about this power that you speak of, which you say ultimately is Brahman. That's the name will be given later on. But tell me what it is made out of. How does it start? So give me some lakshana, some definition of it. And so the answer is, I have to tell you something. The answer is, I have to tell you something. It cannot be seen like you see other things. What? No. You see, there's a difference here, because in the case of electricity also is invisible, but it can be touched. You better not touch it, but it can be sensed. It can be created. It has a beginning. It has an end, and so it does have some lakshana, which is more powerful than of the appliances, but nevertheless it has it. So here, as we will see, this is something like that, but not quite. How is it not quite? Because unlike electricity that you can see, this we cannot make you see it, because you are anxious to find out. That was your whole question. I want to find out what is the entity that makes the world run. So your answer should be, here is the entity, and then I want to understand how that is. This is the issue with the Atma Jnanam. And so, and in fact, here Adi Shankara points it out. And now I have actually made the references on the pages, so I won't fumble as much as before. So he says that in the answer, it says this is not easy to see, and so therefore you have to really put more effort into it. I thought that I had it exactly. Yeah, number 39 on this page, 38 and 39. So he says, I'll read the Shankara Bhashya in Sanskrit for a minute. Natad Jnatyadi Visheshanavat Brahma Tasmat Vishavam Shishya Upadeshena Pratyayitum iti Upadeshe Tadartha Grahanecha Yatna Adishakya Kartavyatam Darshayati. So he says that because of this difficulty, that it is not as easily shown as another visible entity, one has to put more effort into it. And this is why you have to study this. This is the specialization that takes a lifetime. And we will discuss some other time why I'm not able to see it, but we know it by now, that it is just that my mind at the moment is very conditioned to look at specific aspects of life, which is understandable. So this is what is the artha, kama, dharma, and all three of them. And I learned my best way to understand it and so on and so forth. But my mind is not yet subtle enough. I am still grossed out by looking at results and efforts and disappointments and those kinds of things. So this is much beyond that, where you just negate all of these kinds of things. And that requires years of, and so another example of this is that in order to see something on a table which is easily visible, you don't need any instruments. But in order to see the constituent of this in more detail, you have to need some instruments. Similarly, on the medical side, in order to see some dirt or some problems on the skin, you can easily see it. But if you want to see the bacteria, then the amount of specificity of your instruments has to be more. And if you want to see viruses, which is even more subtle, then you know what's going on. It's very difficult, but it's possible. So similarly here, we have to fine-tune our mind to look at the very subtlety of the Atma, as we will try to do in this later on in this class today. So this is one of the things where he says, listen, I have to warn you that it is not as easily seen as other things. And so it is not you have to be prepared, is what he's saying. So says, so do you mean that it cannot be shown at all? There must be some way to see it. What is the Shastra? Please help me. I'm very anxious to find out. And can you tell me how to do it? So Shastra accepts that challenge. And so this is given on page number 4. I'm looking at this I think for some of you, I know Amit Garg has this book. So this is on page 20. And there he says, Sarvatha api Brahma, this is in the Vakya Bhashya, Sarvatha api Brahma bodha iti uktaha acharya aha anyadeva tad vididat avididadati. So he says, somehow please tell me exactly what you're telling. I know it's difficult, but I'll try my best to do it. But can you please, unless you think this cannot be done. So the acharya says, no, I'm not saying that it cannot be done. I'm just saying that it's not easy. And so he says, okay, tell me what it is. So he says, all right, are you ready? All right, here's the way it goes. He says, it is different from what is known and knowable, as we saw in the last class. It is different from what is known and knowable. And why is it different from the known and knowable? This needs to be understood because my goal is to find something which is permanent. I have been knocking around in my life looking for a temporary solution, and what I would think would be long-term temporary, even though it is temporary, but it's a long-term temporary. It will stay with me. But ultimately it goes. And so I've been looking for that, but I want something which does not go away. I want something permanent. So the Acharya says, okay, that is a good point. I agree with you. That should be your goal. That is your goal. But given that, consider the following. Anything which is different from you, anything which is your object, anything that you objectify, your vishaya, anything which is the nature of something different from you, is what is called tyajya. Tyajya means tyaga yogya, means it is worth discarding. Why is it worth discarding? Because ultimately it's going to cause a problem. You may enjoy its company for a while, but it's going to go away. And in fact, anything which you objectify suffers from the qualities of alpatvam. Alpatvam means something which is very limited. And you want something unlimited. Isn't that what you want? He said, yes, I want something unlimited, which stays with me. Okay. So anything that you objectify, don't you see that it is by nature tyajyam? It is tyaga yogyam. It just goes away. And it is anityam, obviously, doesn't stay. It is ashuddham. Ashuddham means one which is not pure. Why? Because it is mixed up with a lot of things. Sometimes it is mixed up with time. Sometimes it is mixed up with other objects. Sometimes it is mixed with conditions. You can see that. Anything which you objectify is conditioned by desha kala vastu. Either because it is here good, but if you go to someplace else, it is no good. It is here now, but if you go someplace else, then it is no good. Or if it is good now with the company of things around it, those things also keep changing, it will disappear. So it has ashuddhitvam, it has anityatvam, and it has alpatvam. All of these defects are there. All right, so you're telling me that what you want is not something which is known. Because I can show you that anything which is known is dependent on you, dependent on time, and it will go away, and you don't want that. Because that's what you want. So he says, okay, that means what? That means that it is unknowable, anything which is unknowable. You have already taken away the whole world of knowable things away from me. So the only thing that I have left is, it is something which is not known. And how can it be, then what am I going to do? How can I be doing? So he says, okay, I'll tell you what. Anything which is not known is also, if you want to know it, if you want to know anything which is inherently not knowable, you have to depend on some sadhana. You have to do something, isn't it? So he says, yeah, that's true, because it's not with me now. So I have to grab it. And so this is what would be called upadeyatvam. So one is heyatvam. See, this is the thing. If known things are heyatvam. Heyatvam means one which will be discarded. Discardable is called heyatvam. This is discardable. Now, one which is not known is we don't know whether discardable or not. It will be discardable, but now it is upadeyatvam. Upadeyatvam means that I don't have it. I don't know it. And through some sadhana, I have to get to know it. So this is what is described by the word apeksha. Apeksha means relevance, dependence. So it has an apeksha for sadhana. There must be something that I need to do in order to know it. Right? So that is also a defect, because how are you going to find the sadhana? You have already given up yourself as a person yet, because you don't know yourself. And I want to know it, so for that I need to have some sadhana. And he says, no, the self is not really, it cannot be needing a sadhana. It is in fact siddha. It is not even sadhya. The self is the only thing which is siddha. And then we will see the differences between sadhya and siddha some other time. But anyway, it is not dependent on other. So now an example is taken up from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So this is what, this is called the Jyoti, Atma Jyoti, Jyoti section from Brihadaranyaka. And so that example can be used here very nicely. And so let me go through that. So what it says is, now look, just take the idea of a sight, recognizing something which is a object and you want to see it. Just look at that example for a minute. Now, don't you see a light is necessary for you to see it? And we all know that all lights emanate from the sun alone. Sun is the original power of light, origination of light. And then you can store that energy in some batteries and you can have some artificial lights. But even artificial lights are nothing but a transformation of sunlight. So the sunlight is important. So you can say the sunlight is important. I need the sunlight. So this is called the Surya Jyoti. And if I have Surya Jyoti, then I can see. Okay, let's go forward. What about a blind person? A blind person is also illuminated by the sun, but a blind person cannot see anything. So you say, okay, I understand. So in addition to the sunlight, I need a functioning eye. In fact, the sun is called, as we saw in the Purusha Suktam, that the sun is the eye of the Lord. It is the macro eye. And corresponding to that is the human eye. So you can say, okay, I understand that. Those are related. So not only do I need the sun to see, I also need a functioning eye to see. Then I can see. So follow this now. So we say, really? No. Why not? So imagine a person who just now suddenly died. Just now. And it's in the daylight. The sun is there. And the eye is not injured. It's not an accident where everything got injured. No. The eye is still there. The sun is there, and the eye, which was functioning 1 second ago, is still there. But can you see anything? Can that person see anything? You can say no, he cannot see anything. So it is not sufficient to say that the sun and the eye are sufficient for me to see. So now we will introduce a source of light called Atma Jyoti. Atma Jyoti. Swayam Jyoti or Atma Jyoti, the light of the self. And now we can see that the Atma Jyoti, if it is there, then you can see things. And another thing you can say is that along with the sun and along with the functioning eye, a mind is also necessary. Very obvious. Sometimes you find that there is a person passing by, and somebody said, "Hey, did you see that person? He used to be our neighbor." So you said, "No, he just passed by in front of us. Didn't you see him?" You say, "I just saw a person, but I was thinking of something else." So he says, okay, I understand that. That was our neighbor, common neighbor that we used to live in Campbell a long time ago. He says, oh my gosh, I missed him because my mind was someplace else. So now we have 3 factors that are necessary: sun or some source of light, a functioning eye, not a blindness, and the mind. Okay? So now we can go back to Atma Jyoti. You see the Atma Jyoti. You see that it can see even if the other 3 things are not there. This is really something. What do you mean by the other things are not there? Okay, let us start with it. Supposing you close your eyes, what do you see? And you say, I don't see anything. And we say, don't you see darkness? Oh yeah, I do see darkness. Yeah, I do see darkness. Okay, I understand. So we ask you, by what aid do you see the darkness? Is the sun necessary to see the darkness? No. Is the eye necessary to see the darkness? No. Is the mind necessary to see the darkness? Not really. It's not as though you're closing your eyes and now you have to think, am I seeing something or not? Hey mind, what do you think? It's not like that. So you see the darkness directly. So this is in our Shastra called Sakshi Vedyatvam. You may have heard this term from studying some other texts or some other acharyas. Sakshi Vedyatvam. So the darkness is Sakshi Vedya. It is not Indriya Vedya. You don't see the darkness, you don't smell the darkness, you don't touch the darkness, you don't taste the darkness, you don't, any of these 5 sense objects you don't use. You see the darkness directly. What sees? Atma Jyoti, the light of the Atma. Let's take another example. dream. There, is there a sun? Unless you're having a nap out in the, very difficult to do if you are lying in blazing hot sun in the middle of the day. You cannot, maybe it's possible, but generally speaking, you sleep when it is dark, or you make the room dark. So you don't need the sun. Do you need the eyes? No. In fact, the eye is non-functional. Do you need your mind? No. The mind is not there. In fact, the waker itself has disappeared. The ahankara has disappeared. But you see not only one thing, you see a very elaborate setup. How? Sakshi Vedyatvam. You see it from directly through the Atma Jyoti. Another example. Supposing you have a pain in your body somewhere. How do you recognize, how do you cognize that pain? Is that pain through the eyes? Do you see the pain? Is it something that you hear? You touch? Do you taste? Nothing. You don't need any of the indriyas. Sakshi Vedyatvam. Similarly, the last example would be anytime you have sorrow, disappointment, or elation in your mind. In your mind, this is the condition of the mind. How do you see it? Not through the sun, not through the eyes, not through the mind, because it is the condition of the mind. Sakshi Vedyatvam. Atma Jyoti. And this Atma Jyoti, isn't it different from the known? At least conventionally known. It may be not different from, so the Atma Jyoti is necessary to see something, to note something. But it is also not dependent on knowing something. It is independently there. Swayam Bhavati, Swayam Jyoti. And so this Atma Jyoti has no apeksha. It has no dependence on anything else. Like very simply, supposing you have any object, and this object to be seen requires another source of light, like the lamp that I have. Only then you can see it. Otherwise you cannot see it. So it is dependent. It has apeksha for anyat eva. But supposing there is a lamp itself, does it need another lamp to show it? So it does not have anyat apeksha. Does it have swayam apeksha? Not really. It's not like it doesn't light up itself. It just lights like the sun. The moon requires to be lighted up by the sun. But the sun can light up everything else, but it doesn't turn on itself to say, I am lighting myself up, because it is the very nature of light. So also is the Atma Jyoti. And with the difference that the Atma Jyoti is necessary to see anything. So it has no dependence on anything. Even the sun has a dependence because it is created by Ishvara and it lasts for so many millions or trillions of years, I don't know how long. And then it will burn itself out. Some other sun will be given the directions to do it. But you need to have light all over the cosmos, no doubt about it. Nothing works in complete darkness. So if you want activity, you want some changes, you want some action, light has to be there. And Ishvara provides light all over the cosmos. Trillions of suns are there. Beautiful. So also, but the sun also requires, because it is a jadavastu, it is an inert thing. Contrasted with that, the Atma Jyoti is one which does not require apeksha to anything. This Swayam Jyoti. I know. The very essence of Atma Jyoti, I know. So, this is what it says. It is different from the known and different from the unknown. And now we can say that this Atma is in fact Brahman. This Atma, which is Swayam Jyoti, Purna Jyoti. Purna Jyoti means that it is never disappearing. Just imagine, just think about that. Being not dependent, being independent, it never goes away. It's always there. In fact, that's what creates the problem. It is so always there that I miss it. Because if it sometimes like a lamp which is on for a minute, this lamp, supposing I want to find out if the lamp is on or not, what I do is I switch it off. And now I know that this light is switchable, now it is off, now it is on. You can't do that with the Atma. It can never be turned off. And so the contrasting thing which confirms it is not there. It is always there. So the only thing that hides me is the doubt. And the doubt can in fact hide it. No doubt about it. It can hide it. So, for example, in the Dakshinamurti Stotram, it says, Rahu grasta divankarendru sadisho Maya samachadinat sanmatra paranopasamharanato yo bhut sushuktaf puman pragasvapsamiti prabodha samaye yapatya vigyayate tasmai shri guru murtaye namahidam shri Dakshinamurtaye Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadrisha. Rahu Grasta. So just look at this, the logic here. So Rahu and Ketu are two asuras in the Puranic stories. This is how the Puranic stories are given to make you understand, that have the ability to swallow the sun. So they are very powerful asuras. Sun is a devata, but they swallow the sun. Similarly to that is the Atma Jyoti. And the Atma Jyoti has the ability to be hidden, like the sun is hidden by Rahu and Ketu. Swamiji, Swami Maheshanji had given this. He said, that he's explaining all this, don't you see that whenever there is, this is the whole essence of the Kena Upanishad. This is what we are driving to, really. It's already talking about it and so on. That without Atma Jyoti, you cannot hear, you cannot see. We've already proven that, right? All through this various examples that we have seen, not a sun, not a ear, not an eye, not a mind, etc. But you can still see it. And so we have proven that really to do anything, this is what is called what we call the ultimate electricity. So in order to see anything, you need Atma Jyoti. Without Atma Jyoti, you cannot see anything. You can't, sun cannot do it, the eyes cannot see it, the mind cannot do it, nothing works. You have to have Atma Jyoti. And yes, the eyes and the sun can modulate it to a slight degree. Unlike your own dream that you can just do it on your own, here what you see, which is the macro picture, yes, that you can say. But the Atma Jyoti is very necessary. Without that, you cannot even have any modulation. Another example of that is the old style projection of light through a projector in a film. And so yes, the film has a degree of modulation through very quickly going through the frames of the film, where some of them are dark, some of them are light, and so you have changes in its imagery, and then you can see people and so on. But really, what makes the picture go is the behind the scenes, the light itself. You turn that off, then there is no, film cannot project anything. So the Atma Jyoti is there, no doubt about it. Now, what can happen is that in the case of, so Swami Maheshanji was saying, let's see the presence of Atma Jyoti all over. It is unmistakable. It just was never pointed out properly. But once it is seen, you can see it is there. And we can tell people, don't you see it? And Swami Maheshanji says, people scratch their heads and say, Swamiji, I still don't see it. I still don't see it. And then furthermore, they doubt and said, how come I don't see it? You see, that's even worse. Before that, I didn't know how to see it. Now you've told me very clearly how to see it, but I still don't see it. Why? What is the problem? So here Swami Maheshanji says, listen to this example by Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadisho. He says, if you see the sun almost completely swallowed by this graha that is taken place, if you see that, don't you see the light of the sun that allows you to see the graha? See, because you cannot see Rahu and Ketu in the middle of the night when the sun is completely hidden. But during the daytime, where you say, oh my gosh, just like there was sunlight and all of a sudden now it is completely swallowed up and now it has gone. But the sight of the swallowing up is also lighted by the sun. Can't you see it? That is the trick. Same thing happened on a cloudy day. So on a cloudy day, you say there is no sun. How do you know there is no sun? Because there is sun, you say there is no sun. Don't you see that? So therefore, it is now to see that the Atma Jyoti is the one that reveals the Atma. It is the one that hides the Atma. Even for a person to see this, look at this. So supposing somebody says, Swamiji, I know you explained this, but I still don't understand. I don't see. So Swamiji says, how do you know you don't see? Why don't you see this, the Atma? He says, no, Swamiji, I'm telling you, I don't see the Atma. He says, I'm asking you, how do you know that you don't see the Atma? Because I see that I don't see the Atma. Exactly. This is like seeing that Rahu Ketu in the light of the sun. I see that I don't see. Don't you see the trick here? You always see. And you have just brainwashed into thinking that it is something different that I have to see. It is not different. It is you. Viditat anyaha aviditat adi. So, Swamiji says, Swami Maheswaranji in this explanation says, this is the definition of Atma is Brahman. How do you mean by that? How can you say that? How can you take this big jump that by this analysis Atma is Brahman? Because the Brahman that you are looking for, you're really looking for Brahman. Brahman meaning one which is Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Satchidanandaha, one which is always there, never disappearing, clearly known, and very Ananda Purvaka. This is what you want. And I've shown you that the Atma Jyoti has exactly the same Lakshana. It never goes away. And it is Nityam, Sat. It is self-effulgent, Chit. And it is Nirapeksham, not dependent on anything. That is the definition of Ananda. And so the Lakshana of the Atma and the Lakshana of Brahman are exactly the same. Here Shankaracharya also says it on page 45 of this commentary. Towards the end of this number 4. He says, Nahi anyasya swatmanoho viditat aviditat bhyam anyatvam vastuna sambhavati iti atma brahma iti esha vakyartha ayam atma brahma mandukya ya atma apahata papma chandogya upanishad. So he says, the true meaning of these sentences is that I am Atma Brahma. This Atma is nothing but Brahma. Why? Because both have the same lakshana. They are not different from each other. I'm reminded of this book called Advaita Makaranda. Beautiful book. Swami Viditatmananda has taken up and perhaps we might take it sometime again. So the second verse of Advaita Makaranda is beautiful. All the acharyas cite this. It says, Aham asmi sada bhami kadachit na aham apriyaha brahma eva aham ataha siddham satchidananda lakshanam. He is exactly saying the same thing as we went. He says, Aham asmi, I am. Unconditionally I am. As Sadabhami, as the Atma Jyoti, which never goes away. It's just that I have not paid attention to it. I'm looking at other things, but I don't realize that the other things are only there when Atma Jyoti is there. They may come and go, but the Atma Jyoti is singularly independent, always there with me, with everybody else. Sada bhami kadachit naham apriyaha means that all the other priyatam, all the other dearness of being in love is all dependent on me. I don't love anything for the sake of that thing, if we really analyze it. Because, this is what Vedantic says. Vedantic Upanishad says that really speaking, all love is for the Atma alone, unconditional. You may like something or not like something, but that is all depending on whether the measuring rod is the Atma. Kadachit naham yapriya. So he says the second line, Brahma eva aham atah siddham. It is proven. Satchidananda lakshanam. So this is what Kena Upanishad is pointing out, and so we still have a few more minutes. So this is an important section, and I'm happy that I was able to see the continuity between both the Padabhashya and the Vakya Bhashya, and given you the example of one which is different from Vidita and also different from Avidita, and it is Swayam Bhavati, Swayam Bhuhu, and so that part of it is over. So now we can go to the next verse for a short time. I don't think we have too much time, but let's start on it. So a new aspect of this is now given. So here there is a doubt in a person's mind, which is saying that you're saying that Atma is the same as Brahman. Didn't you just say that? So we said, yeah, it's true. That's what we said. He says, I don't think that is true. That can be true. Why? Because Brahman or Ishvara, Shiva, is not easy to get, not easy to do. It takes a lifetime of karma and upasana. And so why do people go to temple? If you are the very Brahman, why even go to a temple? But people go. And people like you and I are very few. But really everybody is very convinced of going to a temple and to do prayers to Ishvara. Because the prayers can only be given to someone who is different from you. If you are the same person, how are you going to do the prayer? So therefore, Brahma is what is called Upasya, Upasana Yogya. It is worshipful. And all the Vedas also say that you have to follow the rituals. When you have to go to the temple, there are various instances during the year where you have to pray, Shivaratri, this, that, or the other, Amavasya, all kinds of things and so on. And so you have to do the right kind of chanting. And then if you want to go to, as we saw in the Bhagavad Gita, that in order to go to a higher heaven, then you have to supplement it with upasana. But in any case, all of that has to be done in order to reach Brahman. So for you to say that I am Brahma, I am Atma is Brahma, this is sacrilegious. It doesn't seem right to me. So now to answer that doubt, valid doubt, okay, it says, it starts the next section. Number 5, all the way up to number 9. Yad vyacha anubhyaditam yena vak abhyudyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi na idam yadidam upasate. So, in order to strengthen the understanding of the previously discussed Lakshana of Atma and Brahman, in order to strengthen it, in order to say this is not a casual thing, it has to be understood, and we know that you have doubts like that, which is understandable, but we mean what we say. In order to re-emphasize it, this is pointed out in the verses number 5 onwards. So he says, Yat vacha anabhyutitam. He says, one which cannot be talked about, which cannot be revealed through words, but one which is behind all words to be spoken. Yat vacha anabhyuditam. Which is not revealed by speech, as Swami Paramarthananda pointed out here. Yena vak abhyudyate. And he says, the one in which the speech itself is revealed, tadeva brahmatvam vidhi. That is the Brahma that you need to understand and see, not yat idam upasate, not in upasya Brahma, which is going on. So this is not going to occur later. You have to see the presence of this Brahman now. Because the upasana is meant for krama mukti. That slowly, this is exactly what we're studying in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 towards the end. That the krama mukti is that you do a lot of, so there is a procedure to be done. It is kind of like, as we saw in the Bhagavad Gita, there is you do some theoretical training and then you have to apply it later. This is not like that. Here the application is the understanding itself. And yes, we understand you may not understand, but it really requires vichara, because once you have a clarity of vichara, then it becomes obvious. As I'm sure that we revealed some aspects of Swayam Jyoti, Atma Jyoti, and hopefully that really can tell you that it is not something which is theoretical. This is our life. We can see it. And yet some clouds come in, and then you have doubts about it, just like you have, this is what Swami Maheshananji had pointed out so well. He says, the sun is responsible for the light, and the sun is also responsible for the clouds that hide the light. Both of them. So Agyanam as well as Agyanam is both Sakshi Bhasyam. And so what needs to be seen is that the Swayam Jyotitvam, Jyotihi, is never gone. This is why I have to now see in my life, in my mind. If I'm able to see that it is never gone, then I reorient all my experiences with respect to that understanding. And that means that the whole samsara melts away, because I am never gone. That understanding has to be done. And it is only done through making my mind more subtle and training it and so on. Nothing needs to be done later. No puja, no. Puja is very helpful, no doubt about it, because both as Tatastha Lakshana as as Swarupa Lakshana, Ishvara's presence is always there. And so certainly I can do that. But by just doing Upasana and not doing Atma Vichara, you're postponing things. So this is the tenor of really the rest of the ones will come very quickly. In fact, I don't think we will take that long, because all the verses are very similar. Yan manasa na manute yena ahuhu manomatam tadeva brahmatvam viddhi nedam yadidam upasate. Similar thinking. But it is also repeated because of the emphasis. Please see, it is not a postponable event. It is Sadyamukti right now. And so that's how it proceeds further. And I think we will come to, probably in the next class, we will finish the first chapter and immediately go into the second chapter, which is also just a elaboration of, so today's class is the kind of like the core understanding. And I think we will simply make it more clear, we'll strengthen it. But then we will end with the fourth verse, which is the culmination of this Vedantic insight. So with that, let me close the class with a prayer and see if you have any questions. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Good. Nice to have you all here. I'll wait for a moment. I don't see any questions per se, but last time also there was one question that came in later on, so I may have shut it off too quickly, but let me wait. Well, I don't see any follow-on questions per se, so I take your leave and hopefully we'll see you next week. Om.